Hey everyone, welcome to the part 3 of the series where we are going to build our own HTTP proxy server from scratch using Python. In the last video, we have implemented basic HTTP proxy server where it is going to handle only HTTP traffic. In this video, we are going to implement HTTPS tunneling. So by the end of the video, we will be able to use our browser to browse HTTPS websites, and in our proxy server we will be able to see what are the domains that the user is trying to browse. So before we move to the coding part, let's first understand what is the network flow in the backend. So whenever the client wants to visit any HTTPS websites, instead of directly initiating a HTTP request, the client lets the proxy know that it is trying to connect to a HTTPS site with the connect request. So this is a special HTTP method. It's not like a get or a post. It is to let the proxy know that it is trying to connect to a HTTPS site. Once the proxy server sees that it's a connect method, it extracts the host name from the request and then opens a TCP connection to that host on that port. So in this case, it's google.com on port 443. Once it gets a connection established to the google.com, we revert back a response saying that the connection was established to the client, and this is that packet. And afterwards, whatever the communication happens in between the client and the server, the proxy server acts as a blind pipeline. It won't be able to see what is the data being exchanged. It will be able to see the data, but it will be completely encrypted. So they form a TLS handshake, right? And then after they form a TLS handshakes, they exchange the application data, but it will be in completely encrypted form. Now, this will be a bidirectional communication. So in our code, we will be creating two threads for every HTTPS connect initialization. We will be creating two threads. So one thread will constantly listen uh, data from the client, and another thread will be constantly listening data from the server. Once the thread receives any data from the source, it will send the data to the destination. So now we understood the concept of how the HTTP tunneling works. Let's get to the coding part. So we are going to slightly modify our handle client function in our HTTP proxy server class, where we are going to take the request data, which is HTTP request. Now we are going to parse the HTTP request. In the parse request, we are going to extract details like the type of HTTP request, whether it is a get or a post or a connect, and what is the target and what is the port. Once we got these three details, we are going to establish a TCP connection to the remote server with that host and port. Once we got the connection, we'll be checking what is the type of method. If it's a connect method, then the client is informing the proxy that it is trying to access a HTTPS website. So we will be sending back a response to the client that the connection was established. Once we send this response back to the client, we will be creating two new threads, where in one thread, the client socket is going to be the source, and in another thread, the remote socket is going to be the source. So the bridge function takes two arguments, source and destination sockets. So it's a while true loop where we are going to listen data from the source socket, and then whatever the data that we receive, we are going to send that data back to the destination socket. If the source socket has stopped sending the data, then we break out of that loop and then we send shutdown signals to both the source and destination. So this shut read signal is telling the source socket that we are not going to listen for any additional data that you send. And at the same time, we are sending a shut write signal to the destination socket that we are no more going to send you any additional data. So what it does is the shut write is going to send a TCP fin packet from this. Let's say the socket is a client, a browser, and the destination is the origin server. So if the client stops sending the data and we get out of this loop, we are basically telling the browser that we are no more going to listen for any additional data, and then we are informing the origin server that we are not going to send any additional data. So when you send the shut write signal, it sends a TCP fin packet to the Google server, and then we are basically not closing the complete sockets. It's not socket.close. We are basically making it half duplex. So no more data is going to be sent to the server, and we are telling like if there is any additional data that you Google server wants to send, you can send to the proxy server, and the proxy server will send it back to the client. And then we exit out of this function that eventually closes the thread. Similarly, it goes for the other thread as well. If the server sends a shutdown, if the server sends an empty byte string, then we go out of this loop. And then we similarly inform the server that we are not going to accept any additional data. And then at the same time, we are going to inform the client that we are no longer going to send any additional data to you. So that's how the two threads complete. And then we are going to close the both remote socket and the client socket. Now let's take a look at the parser implementation as well. So previously we used to send only the port and the host. This time we are also sending the method value. And then we are also have added two new lines, if and elif, where we are prepending HTTP or HTTPS to the target so that the URL split actually will be able to extract the correct values for the host and port. So let's run our main program. So this time in our proxy settings, we are also going to use HTTPS. So let's browse some websites. Let's go to google.com. As you can see, we are able to browse our google.com, and at the same time, in our proxy server, we are able to see what are the domains that the client is able to view. So that's it for this video. In the next video, we are going to implement proxy authentication, where we are going to create some dummy users and a blocked list of domains, where if the user belongs to A, then he won't be able to access some list of sites. If user is B, then he won't be able to access some other list of sites. So basically it is like a policies that we are going to configure so the users won't be able to view them or able to access them. So see you in the next video. Bye.